Hello everyone and welcome back to Nelma's Comunicado. This is the channel that helps you become a better public speaker and overall communicator. Let's get to work. For today's episode, we're going to be discussing public speaking in your non-native language. And with that, I'm going to use myself as an example. English is not my first language. So when we moved to the UK from Angola, that's where I'm from, that's where I was born. Shout out to Angola. And the football team, they did really well, by the way. Well done, guys. When we moved to the UK from Angola, I spoke Portuguese. And I moved here when I was around 4 or 5 years old, something like that. So it meant that I quickly needed to adapt because I needed to learn the language. So what my parents did, obviously, got me into school. The school actually put me back a year for 2 reasons. One, because I did speak English. 2, they actually realised that due to the way in which my birthday fell, based on the calendar, the UK school system is different compared to other schooling systems. It's based on the date of your birth. They actually realised that they put me in the wrong year. And that turned out to be the best thing for me because it meant that I got to learn to speak English from scratch, very much from the very start. But it also meant that there was the opportunity for me to be able to pick up the nuances, the accents, very much learning English from my teachers, from the BBC News, because that's all I was allowed to watch pretty much. Actually, no, BBC News and Tom and Jerry, that was it. That was all I was allowed to watch growing up until I learned how to speak English. So I'd say that process probably took around 2 years when I really got to grips with the English language. So by the time I had started reception, I'd done year 1, I'd done year 2. By the time I got to year 3, that's when I really understood how to speak English. At least, the kind of English that you'd learn at primary school level. But it definitely helped. One of the key things that was quite key for me is throughout the whole process, other than not being allowed to speak Portuguese until I had a good grasp of the English language, was also the consistency that I had with that, which was through my teachers. It also fostered a natural interest in politics and the news because that was what I was allowed to watch for a really good period of time. So that's where my interest for politics come. I'll do a video on that at some other time, I think. But one of the key things that I would say that really struck out for me when I was put in positions of public speaking, whether I was answering a question in class, whether I was going to the shop and having to ask the shopkeeper for something that I didn't know how to, all of these little instances and examples are cases of me practicing my public speaking. And I had to practice it in English, and it was obviously a language that I was still learning and getting to grips with. I would say you need to apply public speaking in a non-native language with confidence. You may not know all of the words within that language, but you do know some. And the words that you do know, you need to be confident in the words that you know. So, for example, if you are going to be using the word because to add further explanation in what you are saying and whatever the word because translates to in another language, for instance in French, going back to my very basic not understanding of French, parce que. If you're going to be adding those kinds of words in your speech, you want to make sure that A, you definitely know what it means, so don't use words that you don't know what they mean. B, it lands well with your audience, i.e. it makes sense for you to have that, so you want to make sure it's grammatically correct so that it makes sense, and also so that you don't use words in the incorrect context. Don't make jokes. I will repeat that again. Do not make jokes. Please do not make jokes in another language because jokes said in English won't necessarily land well in Portuguese. Jokes that often Angolans would say just don't have the same effect when you try to say them in English, so I don't bother using them, and vice versa. You need to have cultural appreciation for where it is that you're going to be presenting and who you're going to be presenting with. But you also need to have cultural respect. You need to respect the culture that you're going to be presenting in, and it's not your position to be passing judgment. It's not your position to be pointing out flaws that you may have perceived in relation to that particular culture or dialect. And certainly don't make fun of the other person's language either. So those are 2 things. 1, confidence. 2, cultural appreciation and cultural respect. Okay, that's really 3 things, but I'll put the culture part as one whole piece with as part of this because because I think that's quite important. The other piece of advice that I would really give to you if you're presenting in your non-native language, go easy on yourself. You need to have appreciation for your own skills, your own skill set. So again, in part that kind of does come back to confidence. But one of the things that the audience will really appreciate is the fact that you took the time and the patience to even attempt to speak their language in the first place. I've been doing lessons in Mandarin because I took a module when I was doing my master's in Mandarin, and I found it quite interesting. So I've been taking some lessons here and there to keep them going. But I also appreciate that I am in no position yet to attempt to say even a full sentence in Mandarin, introducing myself, giving a snippet of my background, because I'm just not there yet. So there also needs to be, and I guess this is technically a very convoluted way of saying step 4, which is know when you are ready and when you are not. If you do not even have the beginner's grasp, if you're unable to introduce yourself fully in that new language that you'd like to speak in, do not attempt to do a whole speech in that language, I would say, as a very, very basic rule of thumb. If you can't go beyond the hellos and goodbyes in that particular language, then why? Do not insult your hosts. Do not insult the guests coming who may have paid a lot of money, to be honest, to come and see you and hear you speak, if you're not going to at least attempt to have a good grasp of it, being able to introduce yourself properly. Another thing that I would say is, if you want to make a good impression on your host by speaking in their language, but you know full well that you don't know how to speak their language, but you want to say a few things, you could say hello in that language or in that particular dialect of that region of where you are in. You could perhaps introduce yourself, learn how to introduce yourself, pronounce it properly, get the nuances right, get the punctuation and the accents and the tone in the right place. You could do that, and then you can switch back to your own language. Another thing as well that I would say is find out if we're in the venue that you're going to be in, if they're going to have translation services and tools that the audience will be able to put on and put in their ears to be able to hear you, to automatically hear the translations. If there's going to be somebody translating live as well, that's also another thing that you could find out. This is all part of your preparation for your for your speech, for your presentation. So have good knowledge of that. And last but not least, I always say this, I say this in every episode because it has to be said: practice, practice, practice. Just another thing that I would say, English is not my first language. Portuguese is technically my first language, but my English is stronger than my Portuguese, which means that because I tend to exercise, I work in an English speaking company, I interact, most of my friends only speak English, and if they don't speak English, they speak another language that's not Portuguese, which is not that helpful for me. So where I do speak Portuguese, it's really only at home with my family and with my few Angolan friends that I happen to have. So I would say, as a result of that, I'm not getting enough practice or balance between my Portuguese and my English. Having said that, I do listen to Angolan music, I do watch Angolan TV shows when there's a good one, and I also tune into Angolan radio when I'm able to get access to it as well. You want to immerse yourself in that particular language if you're going to be preparing for something, and I entered the Miss Angola Beauty Contest in 2017 here as a diaspora contestant, so Miss Angola from the UK representing Angola. Anyway, in that context, I had to answer 3 questions in relation to what does it mean to be a woman, what does it mean to be an Angolan woman, and something along the lines of what is something that can be done to improve the lives of women in Angola, or something like that. And of course I had to say that in Portuguese, and believe you me, I practiced because I didn't want to look like an idiot. Number one, but also I wanted to make sure that I made a good impression on the people that were going to be in the audience, whether I won the competition or not. I didn't win the competition, nor did I get selected, but that's not the point. The point is, it's putting yourself in a position where whatever it is that's thrown at you, you know that you can be confident in what it is that you're going to present because you have done the preparation in advance, because you have done the work. So again, this is why I always emphasize practice, 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 and you got to learn a little bit about me on a personal level, so hopefully that that could go some way in helping you become a better public speaker. Let's tune in for next week, and we're going to keep talking about different topics to help you become a better public speaker. Hope to see you soon. Bye.